It means when we want to collect even tax and improve on our tax base, it can mean somebody can go and detect a churn, and we end up going for some small people to tax them. Yet there are people like WATU Credit, Mogo, Progressive, who are having billions and billions of turnover, yet CBK is not having the view to be able to even give them within the net and be able to tax them and relieve the lower cadre from being overtaxed. Chair.
Tugende, and this is spelled wrongly, Tugende, and WATU Credit have not applied, nor have they been licensed, yet they fall under your regulation. Again, to give you context here, Governor, WATU Credit gives 100,000 bodabodas on average every year to the market in Kenya. This is statistics that you can actually get even from NTSA. Now, an average bodaboda spends about 160,000 currently in the market. They are charged what we call a deposit for access. They are further charged another 20K for what is called other additional services like tracking devices. They are charged for insurance during the time that they still own this bodaboda. If you look at the average interest, Governor, that these bodabodas are exposed to, annual interest can compound to an average of 54 to 60%. We are talking about an economy that is running about 2 billion on bodabodas alone every year. Now, I want you to go and check after this the asset recovery rate of WATU Credit. You will find it at 55% annually. Meaning that of all the bodabodas that are given, 55% of them are repossessed against the in duplum rule. Governor, they are not licensed. They are not within your visibility. They are not regulated by you. In fact, Governor, I would argue, very non-political actually, this pure economics, that if there is any biggest union today in the country, any workers' union in the country today, they need to be bodabodas. Because NTSA tells us that there are 1.6 million bodabodas within our economy today. That makes them the biggest workers' union in the country. And again, back to my chair, this is completely out of visibility. Governor, is something wrong? Chair, I submit.
Finally, Chair, so that he answers all of it. So that maybe I forgot. Finally. Chair, and today is at least there is no plenary, so we are ready to serve the nation. Although I'm worried that some level, sugar level might drop, and it looks like it should. Chair, maybe Governor, finally, in is this lending, some of them, Governor, are related, are linked to international people who are shareholding. How many of these that my brother said you don't have view? Are all these Progressive, Mogo, WATU, are they locally based companies? Are they based here? Because, Governor, and you'll clarify this, there is a notion, and I think I don't know, you'll correct because you are the technical person, there is a notion that when we try and regulate them, maybe they are moving to other countries because of the better business practices, or is it no? Is there an excuse that they are using to say when you are trying to keep them on view, you are making their business working environment a bit complicated? Because there is a notion that we are aware, even Chair, you are aware, you have heard they being peddled outside there, and it is good you are here, that most of these companies find it Kenya hard to do business because we want them to comply by the law, and therefore they are moving to other countries. Should we not ensure that they follow our rules within, and don't give us excuses there, they are going to other countries, Governor, and is the business working environment within this country, would it be to ensure we implement so that in as much as they are foreign companies, they also must follow rules and regulations within our country, and don't give an excuse of blackmailing this nation by saying there is poor working environment. Can you put that in perspective? Thank you, Chair.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I was just listening to my colleague Senator Eddie when he really got into the depth. I would want all your ears, Governor. Looking at the issue of the WATU credit, to get the credit, the progressive, but especially these two that you say that they have not been licensed to carry out. So do you want to tell this committee that I can today wake up and open a Mutinda microfinance, and since I've not come to you for regulation, I still continue? Because your response here sort of indicates that regulations are there, CBK Act, DCP Regulations 2022, but since some credit finance have not come to your institution for this licensing, then it is just an open-end illegality that is supposed to take place and continue, yet Kenyans are suffering. Do you sit back for then those companies to come to your offices to seek for license, yet you state here that your mandate is to regulate the unregulated and to oversight? Which is the modality of the oversight that you usually undertake as CBK? Because then it means, or it's an indication that you just reluctantly let people fraudulently continue sort of giving this lending to this like motorbike guys, and also stealing from them by getting the same asset that they've been able to pay and a small sum is remaining, and still take the same bikes to the same market, and this mwananchi is left suffering simply because a regulation has not been adhered to. So it's a very big concern to this committee on how you leave it open-ended for this illegality to continue.
Okay, Dr. Thuge, I'll just weigh in on a small issue. You know, these issues that are being shared is very weighty. You know that Bodaboda is almost becoming the mainstay of the economy of non-formal employed persons in the country. And it's very important that we protect them, because this is a sector that is really extremely vibrant and growing at a very fast pace. Now, maybe what I would like to direct is that out of the 400 applications that are with you, some you've said they have not even applied. But because the law gives you the regulatory authority, I would like to direct that you start with Momentum Credit Company, Mugo, and Tugende in terms of WATU, and WATU, those four, and you do regulatory audit to extent of compliance as a regulatory authority that is in existence, because protections begin somewhere. And since this is touching on a core area, maybe you should start with these four. Well, this committee is going to invite these four entities to try and get to understand what the operation is like. But while we do that, you can swing into action to do regulatory audit on them to the extent of compliance, because something else will come to light in as far as the level or extent of exploitation they are doing from their own system, because I'm sure they must be using some system that once that system becomes visible to you, you should be able to interrogate it. Over to you.
I think, Chair, first of all, I just want to agree with you on the issue of visibility. And we have this electronic data warehousing system that we're putting in place where we can almost in real time know what's going on in the financial system, including the banks. I think right now we have just onboarded digital credit providers, isn't it? And so the next step will be the commercial bank, so we can see in real time what they are actually doing. And I hope that can be completed within this financial year. Certainly, early in the next financial year. I think, Chair, just to go back again, when we realized that the DCP were not really consumer friendly, then we now brought them under the ambit of the central bank. And as I said earlier, we have licensed 32, and quite a number of them are remaining. I think one of the things, and first of all, I do agree that we will. Let's have a look at these four that you have suggested. But even going forward, I think it's just how we. This may have been some kind of a compromise within Parliament. How do we deal with these DCPs that have not been licensed? And because our initial position was that we give them a deadline within which they must license. Otherwise, they cannot carry out this kind of business. So I think that is one area that we need to look at to see how can we put up a time limit within which that they now fully fall under the ambit of the central bank, and they are subject to off-site and on-site inspections. So I think, I don't know if you want to add anything, but yes, I think on the issue of visibility, I think we are moving towards that issue of visibility. We need to address those digital credit providers that are providing credit, but they have not received a license so that we ensure that there's no this abuse of lending at 50 to 60%. But I think maybe that's an area we can even engage with the committee going forward, because I think that was the timelines and how to deal with the so many DCPs may have been a matter of discussion in Parliament.
Mr. Mugo, I want to confirm from you, if you indeed intentionally and knowingly or unknowingly misled this committee, when your response indicated that the timeline is open, yet in the CBK, the Digital Providers Act, Article 59 says, a person who, at the commencement of these regulations, was conducting digital credit business, which is not regulated under any other written law, shall apply to the bank for license within 6 months of publication of this regulation. This regulation is for 18th March 2022. 6 months down the line then, meaning was the month of about August last year. We are in 2023 December. So why are we still in this position if the law is still very clear? Are you misleading this committee?
Just to provide context, I think that was the issue was when we have a license. So the question then was asked in terms of if we have not processed the license, because this was momentum credit. If we haven't, the question was, why is momentum credit still operational? And we said it's because it has applied for a license with CBK. So it doesn't say that the law there doesn't then say if you're not licensed by this time. It talks about submitting an application, a license by the CBK. It doesn't talk about being licensed by CBK.
Chair, there was
how does that apply to Gende and WATU? The same case you have given, and your response here you have said they haven't applied at all.
To these two, that applied to the case of momentum, the very specific question that was asked at that time on momentum.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get it, but still, the two that have been raised by the fraudulent, the predatory lenders, who actually ought to have been regulated with this new law, they haven't applied because the progressive has applied. MCOPA is compliant. Actually, momentum was also applied according to your response, which is okay. But what happens with the ones that have not applied? That's what I'm asking. Whether mentioned here or not, because at the end of the day, you have got an oversight role. You should have a bird's eye view position on all the operators in the market with this regard. I don't want to limit you to the ones that have been mentioned here, because there are two that have been mentioned that haven't applied yet, not even intentionally about complying. But then there are others that are not mentioned here that you should not put them to task or to account just because a committee has mentioned. You see, you hear my point?
I get your point, and of course, what has been happening, because there's been complaints lodged by the public. So we've always said there's a specific address we have on unregulated credit providers. And when they complain through that, we then forward them, because it's now a criminal issue, we then forward them to the banking fraud and investigation, or they're also investigated by the DCI. And we have had cases where the DCI or the BFID has come to us and said, we have come across this, are they regulated or not? And we say they are not, and then the normal criminal process will take place.
Chair, I don't mean to dominate on this, but are you telling this committee that the only time you actually detect unlicensed DSPs is only if the public triggers the central bank? Are you saying there's no mechanism of oversight to be able to identify people within our economy who are actually doing any shady businesses as DSPs without licensing? Is that what you're telling the committee?
Okay, maybe to wrap it up, Mugo, for purpose of clarity, that article clearly states the launch of the application by unlicensed individuals within 6 months. The question becomes, what about those that have not launched the application within 6 months after the regulation has taken effect? You understand? Just systematically. The question they are trying to raise is that the law says they must have launched the application with CBK within 6 months of this regulation coming into effect. But then there are a certain number that have launched the application. But there are others that, based on the information you've provided, that have not launched the application. And yet that means that these are entities operating completely in total disregard of the law. So as the regulatory authority, the enforcing mechanism should lie with you. You understand? Because we're talking about consumer protection. It's not a casual event. It's not something you can close your eyes to. You know, thousands of innocent public are falling victims to these people, you know, in terms of finance. So the processing of the application is one thing. The launch of the application is one thing. The processing of the application to its logical conclusion is another thing altogether. But it shows with a lot of clarity, just based on our engagement, Dr. Thuge, that there is a major gap or capacity limit in central bank in terms of your own internal capacity, because I'm sure you will not get the applications and be able to process and just issue licenses. It involves you carrying out a physical inspection and audit on them to be able to get to understand that these people do meet the criteria for licensing or not. Now, while you are doing that, the entities that have neither launched any application and they are not visible to you, but they are exploiting the public. And the issue of concern here is, how do we deal with these entities? And they are dealing with the public in thousands. It's not some isolated incidents, you know, in hundreds of thousands in terms of application. Then our public are exposed. Whether it is a capacity challenge within CBK to be able to, once the regulation has come into effect, maybe the number of applications that has come and the volume of that work may be overwhelming for you, but you know, the law does not emphasize a situation where you will say we are overwhelmed. You are expected to receive and process as required. So how do we protect our public? And my previous guidance applies in terms of maybe to start with, do a thorough regulatory audit on these four. And we get to see the impact. Maybe that will inform you by giving you a clear indication of the extent of exploitation, visibility, and thereby maybe, you know, a very deliberate decision to be able to carry out an audit in all of them in order to protect the public. Okay, that is where it lies, and it's very important that because we can't smart ourselves out of this situation the reality is that there are public out there en masse suffering. How do we protect this public? And that's where the concerns are. And the regulation is very clear, Mugo, maybe to the extent of responding to the question relating to momentum credit, you have responded appropriately. However, to the extent of responding on microcredit licensing, then it may not have been adequately responded because there are players out there who have not complied with this, section 59 of this act. Over to you.
Chair. Okay.
I think, Chair, let me, Mr. Muga can respond, but let me say that the idea was to have, as I said, we've licensed the 32, and I think there's about 400 that actually applied before the deadline. And indeed, if they did not, then according to the Article 59 that you read, they were given 6 months. And they were given 6 months to seek the license. And if not, really, then it's an illegality. I also know that, and perhaps Mr. Buo can update us on, we're also very proactive to find out which entities are doing this kind of business, digital credit lending, for example, without a license. And I know even recently we've had, I think we even wrote to the commercial banks to see whether there is, because they must have, an account or something at the bank, to help us find those people who are, in a sense, breaking the law. So we are seized of the matter, but maybe I just allow Mugo to give any more details you might have.
So just to add on to what the governor has said is that we have actually asked the various, this was some time back, about 2 months ago, asked the various investigative agencies to investigate any persons conducting unauthorized business. This is not just for DCPs, but also for mobile money, for money transfer, or anything that would be deposit taking perceived. So there's an exercise that's going on under the DCI across the country just to look at who is doing that for appropriate action to be taken.
A point, depending on the public to get information, how do you conduct your oversight? Similar question I asked, but you're still not responding. It's over 1 year after the regulation came past the 6 months, and you're still sitting back, having WATU credit and to gain the credit that this committee has questioned, and you're still sitting back waiting for the investigations to be done. And it's clear according to your office that they are not licensed. Why are they open? Even as we speak, why are they existing? That is a simple question that you are not answering.
Senator Cherargei.
Chair, two questions. One, CBK, I think you, Chair, with your indulgence, the issue of the confidence of foreign investors and foreign direct investment, I think you forgot, you kindly shed light on it. The one I had asked about, some of these, including WATU, Mogo, Progressive, have linkages outside, or what we call international companies. Does it mean when you want to regulate them, they always give an excuse by saying they want to move outside the country? I think that was a follow-up, just to follow up on the confidence of foreign direct investments into the country. And then finally, Chair, just a comment on it and the business environment in the country. Finally, people like WATU Credit Chair record turnover of 3 billion in a year, and yet CBK cannot detect 3 billion. Chair, are we even safe from money laundering? Because if somebody transacts more than 3 billion in a year, and CBK does not have the bad eye view, I know there are people like Senator Ed who do bad watching at night, but having bad eye view of Chair in the day, 3 billion we are talking about, Chair. Can the CBK, have we allowed these companies to be rogue, they are regulatory up to themselves. What is the role of CBK? So that I am saying this with a lot of confidence and with a lot of courage, without fear of contradiction, Chair, because if you do not have the view of these operations, it means when we want to collect even tax and improve on our tax base, it can mean somebody can go and detect a churn, and we end up going for some small people to tax them. Yet there are people like WATU Credit, Mogo, Progressive, who are having billions and billions of turnover, yet CBK is not having the view to be able to even give them within the net and be able to tax them and relieve the lower cadre from being overtaxed, Chair.
Dr. Tuget, just maybe to fine-tune Chererge's statement, FDIs cannot operate outside our laws and regulations. You know, it does not matter. It's not, we cannot excuse FDIs to operate with the, you know, pretense of they can withdraw. Because Equity Bank, okay, which is a local company, is the largest bank in DRC. Okay, you know, microfinance, digital financing institution can be done by our local subsidiaries of banks for that regard. So there is no capacity challenge per se for us to fear withdrawal by foreign direct investment if they are operating you know, outside the law. I think that statement needs to be corrected. Every person coming to do business in Kenya is subjected to the same law. And our law is so fair, such that there are other laws in other countries, Dr. Tuge, that will talk about a foreign investor, a local investor, and apply different rules. But in Kenya, the law applies evenly to everybody. So we are not subjecting them to unfair disadvantage. In other countries, there is requirement, and you know, this is first-hand information, it's not hearsay, where for a foreign company to come and invest, it must have a local partner, and it's within their laws. You know, but in Kenya, we don't require them. They can come and invest directly without other encumbrances or measures that is able to discourage them. It's the fairest play environment. So the statement Senator Chererge maybe repeated a couple of times, I want to correct, you know, for the record that this country has laws, there are regulations, and they are not tailor-made for anybody. It's for everybody, okay? And as such, there is no protection or victimization for that matter. As with that in mind, I think then we can do the follow-up, because I know we are rotating around the same issues, and I'm sure you've responded, but nevertheless, the answers have not come out so solidly in a convincing way for us to move on. And that is the issue that is at play. And because we had already guided, actually directed as a committee that you need to carry out regulatory audit on these four, because then it will send a signal and report back to the committee with your findings, and also it will inform you internally. It's not about us, it's you getting to understand the extent of exploitation that is happening on the public, and even help, you know, National Treasury for purpose of having better visibility in terms of what needs to happen in terms of taxation and other measures, okay? But now, just in conclusion with the statements, the issue, why it is, the questions are coming back is maybe an assertive statement from you, the authority, regulatory authority, on this issue, because the fears and concerns are real, the exploitations are real, and unfortunately, because I've mentioned, maybe because of the regulation coming into effect, and a lot of, you know, 400 applications that all require audit, for you to be able to assess and find or not find them suitable to be licensed, may be an issue. But while that is happening, exploitation is ongoing. Maybe you can start by cracking the whip on those that have not made an application, which I believe will be in hundreds also. And then as we look at those that have applied and find if you can fast track and get that compliance done. I give you now final response before we move out of the statement issue, Dr. Thuge.
Chair, I've had the sentiments of the committee, and I think you have summarized it quite well. We will look at these four companies that have been mentioned. I said we certainly learn from what's going on there. There is maybe a larger issue on foreign investments that maybe we can have a discussion for another day, because I think it's very important for the for the country, and to be able to put in measures that encourage foreign direct investments, because I'm convinced there's more that can be done, but we are not really getting enough foreign direct investments. So, Chairman, you've given us quite some homework that we have to do within the next 14 days, and we'll come back to you in the 14 days.
Wish you well in helping this country out of the economic challenges that we have through your policies and internal control mechanisms, particularly of critical concern that I believe the bank may be able to do something, of course in collaboration with the government as a whole, is on the issue of foreign exchange, issues that is getting out of control. I acknowledge that it's not something unique to only Kenya. It's affecting the globe as it is, but because this is our country, we do our best within our quotas. Otherwise, thank you very much for responding. Then take the guidance that we've given you and write back to us with a formal report. We can interrogate, and if there's any need for us requiring your help in making sense of that report, maybe we'll invite you back. Otherwise, we look forward to continuous engagement as we both serve the great public of Kenya. Thank you very much.
More Radio, 88.2 FM. We are in charge.